For coming.
Hold on.
Wait.
You're good.
Thanks everyone for coming. Before we begin, can you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All righty. Thank you for, do I have to turn this on, Greg? I do. I'll try not to blow the speakers up. Thank you for attending this community input session regarding redistricting. Please be advised that the session will be video and audio recorded to be subsequently placed online and made publicly available. This is not a typical meeting of the House or Senate committees and will not be attended by all committee members. This meeting is also going to be broadcast to local channel 8. The meeting is occurring in Sullivan County at the Claremont Savings Bank Community Center. Staff at the General Court has worked to secure places to hold these sessions, and I'm grateful to staff and the organizations that control the use of the facility for allowing us to use them. This is a joint meeting of the Senate and House Redistricting Committee. It's not exactly accurate. This is a meeting of the House Redistricting Committee and also the Senate Redistricting Committee. So you actually get to see two committees in one. As a result, we have members of both the House and Senate here with us tonight. Senator Gray, would you introduce yourself in the Senate?
Thank you. I am Senator James Gray. I am the chair of the Senate Select Committee. I'll let Senator Susi introduce herself in a minute. Just one thing of note is that the Senate does not allow cheering, clapping, booing. If you're going to give input, we want you up at the microphone so that you can tell us what you're doing. So please observe that, and we'll get along just fine. Senator.
Thank you. I'm Senator Donna Susi. I represent Senate District 18, which is 5 wards in the city of Manchester, the town of Litchfield. I'm a member of the Senate Election Law Committee and also a member of the Redistricting Special Committee.
I'm Representative Stephen Smith, Deputy Speaker of the New Hampshire House and Vice Chair of the House Committee on Redistricting. And I represent Ackworth, Charlestown, Goshen, Langdon, Munster, and Washington.
Thank you. I'm Lizzie Weber. I represent Cheshire 1, which is immediately to the south of Sullivan, Walpole, Westmoreland, Chesterfield, and Hinsdale. And I also serve on the Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee in the House.
Good evening, I'm Margaret Smith. I represent Durham and Madbury in Stratford County, and I've been doing that for about 100 years. I am on the House Judiciary Committee and on the this special committee on redistricting.
Hi, I'm Bob Lynn. I represent Wyndham in the House of Representatives. I'm on this redistricting committee and also on the finance committee.
Good evening. My name is Wayne McDonald. I represent Rockingham County District 5, which is composed of the town of Londonderry. In addition to serving on this committee, I am also on the Election Law Committee in the House, and I serve there as Vice Chairman.
Thank you. All right, information on the redistricting process for the House can be found on the General Court website. Once there, select House of Representatives, then select committees and standing committees. You'll find all of the committees listed there, including the Special Committee on Redistricting. There's a link there that you can click that will allow you to email all the committee members, and a link to the web page where you can look at previous meeting minutes, documents that have been uploaded, and upcoming meeting information. Redistricting is a process that occurs throughout the country every 10 years after the federal census is completed. The population data is used to create districts for representation at all levels of government. Here in New Hampshire, our Constitution says the responsibility for the creation of those districts is that of the legislature. The districts to be redrawn in New Hampshire will be congressional, Executive Council, State Senate, State Representative, County Commissioner, and delegates to the State Party Convention. There are handouts available that have more detail on Sullivan County. As you get up to speak from the House of Representatives side, it would be helpful for you to comment on things you might think are important for redistricting in Sullivan County, but of course you can make comments in other districts as well. We will be doing this event in every county. This is the sign-up sheet for anyone that wishes to speak. And so side note from the prepared thing, what we're really looking for and why we're going out to all the counties is data that's hard to collect. What's working for you with what you have now? What's not working? What do you wish would be left alone or changed? Or it's impossible to drive from this town to that town without locking your hubs in and going on a crazy dirt road, things like that. That's just not information we can get looking at maps. So with that, we'll open the House session. Senator Gray.
Yeah, we're good.
All right.
When you started talking, we were good.
All right. First up, Representative Tanner.
Good evening. I'm Linda Tanner. I live in Sunapee and I'm a state representative for Sullivan District 9. I represent a flotarial district with a total population of 20,761 voters or citizens in the 2020 census. If my math is correct, this flotarial district represents a 350% deviation from the 3,444 voters per representative as prescribed in the current guidelines. New Hampshire, as well as Sullivan County, have some gerrymandered districts. I am concerned about fair maps in the congressional districts, executive council, and Senate districts. These districts, like Senate District 9 and Executive Council District 2, which come into Sullivan County, result in unequal representation and represent a partisan priority that needs to be addressed. However, tonight, I'm speaking about the Sullivan County House districts. I believe strongly in fair redistricting maps and an open and transparent process. I supported an independent redistricting committee last term, and I do so today. Here are the new census figures along with the current number of representatives in the 8 towns in my flotarial. Cornish has 1,616 citizens with 3 representatives. Croydon, 801 with 2 representatives. Grantham, 3,404 with 3 representatives. Newport, 6,299 with 3 representatives. Plainfield, 2,459 with 3 representatives. Springfield, 1,259 with 3 representatives. Sunapee, 3,342 with 2 representatives. And Unity, 1,581 with 3 representatives. And I'm a representative in each one of those districts. The goal of fair redistricting should be equal population among the various districts so that the vote of each citizen for representation in the New Hampshire House is approximately equal in weight to that of any other citizen with a slight 5% deviation. Flotarial districts are complicated and confusing. They consist of many towns or wards, 8 towns in my case, with vastly different populations, connections, and economies. The fact that a town or 2 towns have 1 representative from their area, as well as 1 floating over them, gives the impression that they have 2 or 3 representatives in the House, and that is misleading. It treats these towns as if they had a 2 or 3 member district, which they do not. Flotarial districts pose several disadvantages to voters as well. The average citizen doesn't know what a flotarial district is. Take it from me, I've had that question many times. What it accomplishes or why it exists. Voters are less likely to know their flotarial district representative because the flotarial district covers such a large area.
The Flotarial District representatives are not part of the everyday interactions and connections in the individual communities. For example, two ends of my district, Plainfield, is much different from the other end, Unity. Plainfield has a population of 2,459 and is truly a part of the Upper Valley, with ties and connections to the upper part of Sullivan County. While Unity, population 1,581, has very strong connections with Claremont. When voting on an issue that arises in the House with 8 towns, it's very difficult to represent all their local government, schools, and economies fairly. In the 2002 court case, Burling versus Chandler, the court rejected flotarial districts as an unsound redistricting device. We are a representative democracy. Whenever possible, redistricting should produce one person for one vote. Districts should be drawn so that every voter has the same equal representation as every other voter. This is accomplished by creating as many single districts as possible. I urge you to consider single districts in Grantham, population 3,404, in Sunapee, 3,342, for a single representative district, and Newport with 6,299 for a 2-person representative district. Further, I would urge the committee to set multi-towns in districts with a priority to their economic and governmental connections, and please eliminate the flotarials. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Gottlieb.
Thank you. And I'm glad it's a nice evening and we'll all come out and enjoy it. I am Sue Gottlieb and I'm presently representing Sullivan. Well, thank you, Darren. It's the little things that count. I'm Sue Gottlieb, currently representing Sullivan County District 2, which is comprised of the towns of Sunapee and Croydon. And I am also a member of the Sunapee Board of Selectmen. I am speaking here tonight as a longtime resident to suggest the Redistricting Committee follow the New Hampshire Constitution and restore Sunapee's status as a single district. Based on the 2000 census, Sunapee became a single district, a status that many of the town's citizens had worked hard to achieve and valued highly. However, during the 2010 redistricting process, Sunapee lost its standing as a single district, even though its population was about as close as it could get to the perfect number. Sunapee found itself allied with a town with whom it shared virtually no common interest, and as well it was enrolled in the 8-town flotarial district you just heard described by Representative Tanner. To many in Sunapee, it felt like a gerrymandered decision, hoping to tilt the political winds and the ballot results in a certain direction. It did not feel as if the constitutional requirement was being followed. As of now, Sunapee is again easily within the 5% standard. Are the town's citizens once again going to feel as if that constitutional promise is always dangling just out of reach? And I would say the same is true for Newport, because they've had the same experience. If, in your wisdom, the interim map that you design keeps Sunapee connected to 1, 2, or even 8 towns, would you try to give us a partner with whom we share common interests? And I would suggest that the town of Springfield would be useful. We have a contractual agreement to use the transfer station. And because the towns also share a watershed, many citizens participate in joint efforts to maintain the national resources of our area. So good luck on your job, and I hope you make us all very happy.
Thank you. We will do our best. Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, and thank you all for traveling, not so far for you, but everyone else had a little ways to go, and thank you for coming to Sullivan County. My name is Brian Sullivan, representative from Sullivan District 1, representing Cornish, Plainfield, Grantham, and Springfield. And first of all, I'd like to say ditto to everything Rep. Tanner had to say. I think the materials are very confusing. Very few people in the 4 towns I represent actually know that they have 3 representatives who represent them. They know generally about the Oxenham, Plainfield, and myself, but not so much about Representative Tanner because she's spread pretty thin. I would also say that when it comes to getting out and meeting people, it's far easier for someone with 1 or 2 towns to get out and meet the voters, which is what New Hampshire's all about, than someone with 8 towns. I would strongly urge you to give materials another thought. Speaking more specifically about Sullivan District 1, Mr. Chairman, you referenced 4-wheel drive tracks. We've got one, and that's how you get from Grantham to Plainfield. I want to preface this by saying I truly have come to enjoy, love, respect the folks in Cornish and Plainfield. I thoroughly enjoy driving the back roads of those 2 towns. They're lovely places, but they are very separated from Grantham and Springfield. And literally, I used to periodically have somebody stop me when I was out in the neighborhood in Grantham, live in Old Farms, and people would pull over and say, can you tell me how to get to KUA, Kimball Union Academy in Plainfield? And their GPS had sent them into my neighborhood thinking they were going to take the Croydon Turnpike. Very deceiving name. Turnpike it is not. Many times you can't really get through it with a 4-wheel drive unless you're willing to do some serious damage. There's a lot of ways to cut up this pie. I would suggest that it would make sense to have 2 districts, one of them being Plainfield and Cornish, another one being Grantham and Springfield. If you want to let Representative Godwin's dreams come true, Grantham and Croydon could be a district perhaps. But they do need to be joining each other. I would suggest that Grantham and Plainfield are, when you look at the map, the big black blob at the top looks like it's very much adjoining. One of the things that is adjoining it is a big game preserve, which is fenced in. You don't go there, I don't go there. If you pay a lot of money, you might go there. But basically, it's that game preserve that really gives us a lot of our common geographical territory. Nobody votes there. Those are my thoughts. Again, thank you for coming, and I wish you luck as well.
Thank you. Representative Stapleton.
I'm going to wave off. I thought that was just a sign of the sheet. No one had to speak.
All right, Van Mortel.
Good evening, all of you. I'm actually the first politician who's talking. Isn't that amazing? I submitted written testimony today to both committees, so I'll only summarize my testimony. My name is Ben Mortel. I live in Unity since 1984, and I work with low-income families, individuals in Sullivan counties for over 30 years. I'm also a new board member, and I'm speaking on the behalf of the Granite State Interfaith Action Fund, which is a statewide interfaith organization dedicated to increasing voter turnout and election fairness in low-income people and people of color communities. I trust and hope that you're here today and you've been traveling around the state to listen and act upon our concerns, and that this is just not going through the motions. Redistricting has become a very partisan issue. There's a greater danger now in New Hampshire with politics controlled in the legislature and the executive branch by one party. It's important that you ensure that this redistricting process is transparent, inclusive, and fair, so that New Hampshire residents like myself do not get even more cynical about the motives of politicians. I have specific concerns about Sullivan County, concerning the State House, the reps, the Senate, the Executive Council districts. My thoughts are based upon the concept of a community of interests. This refers, and some of the reps who talked earlier and been stressing this concept, this refers to whether voters join together through redistricting, have common interests. The questions to ask to the residents of the primarily rural or urban communities, and whether or not they share common interests, such as common schools and youth programs, where they work and shop, where they receive medical care, where they go to church, and if they share natural resources like common recreational areas and transportation systems. I've lived in Sullivan County since 1980 when I turned 25 years of age. My thought about living in New Hampshire has kind of changed over time. When I first came here as a 25-year-old, I was kind of annoyed when people called me a flatlander since I came from Connecticut. Over time, I became what people call a drawbridge flatlander. I didn't want any other flatlanders to come to New Hampshire. The longer I've been here, and the more I appreciate living in Sullivan County, I actually have become to the point now where during my work career and just traveling around, I've been both pleased and amazed at how people don't really know. I mean, certainly where Unity is, where I live, or even where Claremont is. And if they know where we are, they kind of think we're kind of crazy. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the flip side of that is this community in Sullivan County really has very unique economic and social needs that need to be carefully considered with redistricting. Let me give you some examples. Let's talk about the Senate district. Sullivan County would be better served if all of its residents were in the same district. Now, I'm not sure you can create a district that's only Sullivan County, but at least you can create a district that has all of Sullivan County in it. I'll give you an example from Unity. Unity is in Senate District 8. It includes towns as far south as Ware. Our economic and social needs are not the same as towns like Ware, or even towns like Antrim and Deering. It's virtually impossible, and I think Representative Tanner was explaining the difficulties she had representing people in different areas of Sullivan County. Imagine a senator trying to balance the interests of Unity and Ware. They're totally different types of communities. So I think that it's important that you take that into consideration. So I agree with what other people have said earlier, that Newport and Sunapee should have their own House district. I haven't thought about Grantham before. Maybe that makes sense as well. So let me give you an example from someone living in Unity. Now, Unity has a very small population, but we have a large geographic area. There's West Unity where I live, which is geared towards Claremont, and then there's East Unity, which is more geared towards Newport. When I first moved to Unity, Unity was part of the Claremont district. Now, since I worked and my family worked, we went to church in Claremont, and we shopped in Claremont, and my kids did sports in Claremont. I felt very much being represented. Since then, it's flipped over to Newport. Nothing against the folks in Newport, but I really don't share any overt common similar interests with them. Now, I don't think that it simply makes sense for unity to be flipped back and forth, because I think people in East Unity don't have very much of a common interest with people in Claremont. So I think you really need to carefully figure out, with the small towns that remain, how you can join them up in a reasonable way that allows those people to share some common interests. I also understood for the first time today, listening to Representative Tanner about this idea of rep. I've always wondered why she's one of my reps. Now I understand why, because it never made any sense to me. And I actually think you'd be better served by not having multiple reps in these small towns, but instead having one rep that represents towns that appear to have a lot in common. The last thing I want to talk about is the executive council. Municipalities in Sullivan County should be in the same district or not. Unity and other Sullivan County municipalities are part of District 2, which has been described as shaped like a dragon going across the state of New Hampshire. Residents of Sullivan County do not share a community of interest with many of those towns. The most notable example are towns in the seacoast. We're very different than towns in the seacoast. Most people in the seacoast don't even know where Claremont is, I can tell you, from traveling there. This is a clear example, unfortunately, of excessive partisanship in redistricting. The map shaped District 2 allowed the Republican Party to aggregate many registered voters into one district, and has allowed other districts to more easily be voted in as Republican. This is classic gerrymandering, since Councilman Warmington is the only Democratic member of the Executive House. I can tell you this, that results leads to voters becoming cynical of the political process and politicians in general. I want to thank you for turning to Sullivan County to hear our concerns. To complete your job, you need to return to Sullivan County after the proposed new maps have been created. True transparency and a fair and inclusive process requires the public have the opportunity to review and comment on the proposed maps before redistricting is final. Thank you.
Thank you. Might interest you to know that representatives that have known me for years, but from other parts of the state, always ask me, so what's it like up in the North Country? I'm like, dude, I have no idea. I'm an hour from Massachusetts. Oh, boy. All right, Representative Cloutier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I think maybe I'm going to take my mask off to make sure that it's picked up properly. I think I'm far enough away. Okay, again, I'm Representative John Cloutier from Sullivan County District 10. I sort of have to represent a flotilla the entire city of Claremont. And I first want to say, although I'm most interested in the House districts, I also want to take the time to urge the committee to do a fair and impartial redistricting job for our state Senate districts, our executive council districts, our county commissioner districts, as well as our U.S. congressional districts. These are just as important to a lot of people. So I know you have a very difficult job, but with all due respect to a previous committee, some of the districts, and not so much some of the executive council and state senate districts, they were a little bit strange to me, let's put it that way. That's my opinion. But I do want to speak also about the House redistricting. And I've been around a while. I've actually been involved in 2 redistricting efforts. The first one, and by the way, when I was first elected, I represent just one ward in Claremont, Ward 1, which you are in now, downtown Claremont. But after the 2000 census, we had a redistricting battle between the Democratic governor and Republican legislature. And in the end, there was an impasse, and a judicial master from South Carolina, I believe, had to draw the legislative districts. And we didn't complete it until the end of July in 2002. We had to push off the filing date for the primary, and I remember that very well. It was a very hectic time. And what ended up, and it may have been a fair process and maybe most everybody in the state was satisfied, but in my case, I went from representing one district ward in Claremont to representing the entire city of Claremont, plus 2 towns in Sullivan County, Leominster and Unity, and we had 5 rep seats. And the problem is with that, the city of Claremont dominated that district, and it was only one occasion in the 10 years we had that district from 2002 to 2012 that we elected a candidate from outside of Claremont. The Claremont candidates, whether they were Democrats or Republicans, always got elected because we had more voters. And when I went to those, I did the best. Of course, I'm from a city, and I'm a city guy, so it took me a while to understand, town government. It was a good experience. I went to some of the town meetings at both communities and school meetings, got to know some of the people, and that was one of their complaints constantly. We don't like this system. With all due respect to you, Representative Kluge, we know you're your representative, but we think we ought to have some more equity in this, and not just have Claremonters dominate us in the New Hampshire House of Representatives. At least we ought to have a say. So I think we ought to. I urge this committee to try to create as small a district as possible and give some of our smaller communities a voice in the New Hampshire House. And I think some of my colleagues mentioned some examples, and I realize that it's partly based on population, but I feel that it needs to be fair. If Claremont can get 4 seats again, that's fine. But I think that I'm also concerned as chair of the Sullivan County delegation about these other small communities in Sullivan County as well. And if you combine some of them, if you have to combine some of them based on the census, you ought to look for areas of common concern. For example, Claremont's a good by itself. I think another one, a good case to be made is maybe for one rep is Cornish and Plainfield. They have their own SAU now, so maybe they ought to at least get a rep, because there's a lot of history between those 2 communities. And maybe Leominster and Goshen, for example, a lot of history. I used to be a joint school district. I'm just giving you some examples. I don't mean to dictate, but I think you ought to look for that. What some of these towns have in common. Some towns don't have as much in common. So I urge this committee to do that. And I'm hoping we're going to be able to keep our 13 seats. Sullivan County, we're one of the smallest counties in the state. And I hope we'll keep at least 13. I would like to keep 4 for Claremont, but I know it will not be easy, and you have a very tough job. I'm sort of glad I'm not in your shoes, to be frank with you. So but I said, I welcome the Sullivan County. I'm glad you're coming and get input, and if you can afford to come back, that's fine, but I will be anxious to see what happens with this committee and what you recommend come whenever we take it up, probably sometime in May or June. Thanks very much. Appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Ellis Robinson.
Good evening and welcome to Sullivan County. Thank you for coming all this way, and great to see you and have you here. First of all, we'll do that. I also want to give you each a special thank you for the amount of time and energy that you're putting into this campaign. You can't possibly satisfy everybody. And hey, all the big money you're getting paid to do this, and all the bennies, we really appreciate all the work you're doing to put together a groundwork for New Hampshire elections for the next 10 years. And thanks. I have 4 points I wanted to mention to you, so I'll make this quick. First is, as you consider Sullivan County's communities of interest, please keep in mind that ours very much follow the major transportation routes. For example, I-91 and Route 12A come down the Connecticut River. That makes it very easy for those towns that are in the western part of the county to keep in touch, Plainfield all the way down to Langdon. And that's where they shop, and that's where they travel, and that's how they get out of the region and all of those things. At the same time, there's only one continuous east-west route in the county, and that's State Route 11 that stretches from Sunapee to Newport to Claremont. So in order for anybody to get across, as Brian was telling you, you have to get to that route. The third thing is that Grantham has easy access to 89, and we orient along that major route. There aren't any other towns really that have an exit to 89, so if anyone wants to go there, they have to come through us. But there also are real challenges for those towns that are not on one of those major routes, because they have to connect with, we'll call them border towns, and some of those border towns actually are out of the county. There's been a conversation so far, and I think the only representative of Grantham who's here, I agree that Springfield has much more alliance with Sunapee than it does with Grantham. Grantham is 40 people short of that magic number to get our own representative. And I would like to suggest that we actually undoubtedly got at least that many people just in this summer when people were moving up here. So we deserve that extra one. And if you want to give us Croydon too, we'll take Croydon. Croydon they can't get anywhere without coming through Grantham, unless they're going west. So those are some things to think about. The other thing I'd like to suggest is that you remember that Sullivan is a purple county. The checklist on file with the Secretary of State reflecting voter registration as of the 2020 general election show a near tie between Democrats and Republicans. 9,676 Democrats versus 9,415 Republicans, with about 13,000 undeclared. Please make sure that voting districts reflect this balance. In the same way, New Hampshire is also a purple state. As you amend districts for the Executive Council, particularly U.S. House of Representatives and the State Senate, please pay attention to this balance and make districts as competitive as possible. Finally, I want to thank you again for holding these very valuable county meetings. Once you establish draft maps that you're comfortable with, I hope you will hold one more series of meetings for each county's residents to comment on your work. Last spring, Governor Sununu told NHPR's Laura Kanoy on NHPR, if any of the redistricted maps are gerrymandered, I will veto them. Only with balanced, nonpartisan districts established with a transparent public process can we be assured that our state government will fairly represent all New Hampshire residents. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions or clarifications, I'm happy to. And I have a few copies of this so you can have it for your file. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for helping my colleagues understand I genuinely do live in the land of you can't get there from here. I guess unless you live in Grantham. All righty.
It's great, we love having you.
Did I miss anybody? Yes?
I just would like to sign up.
All righty. Can I get your autograph? I had one a couple of years ago. I just didn't know. Thank you. That's yours. Well, you can tell everyone who you are since you're up there.
My name is Kyle Messier. I'm simply a resident of Claremont, New Hampshire. I'm here to echo whatever you're saying in much detail, that I hope that we realize we are a purple state and that Sullivan County is for Polk County, and that we redistrict in a way that is not partisan and will reflect the communities, that we redistrict in a way that communities that are like-minded can work together because of our economies, our travels, our education system. And that I hope when you do put a map together, that you do come back and show us the map so we can comment. I think that's most important for transparency. Thank you for your time, and I thank you for coming to Sullivan County.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Thank you all for coming, and with that, we'll close the House session.
Done.
Thank you, everyone.